Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Monday, November 24th, 2025, and today we are going to be talking about the President of the United States and his approval rating on the national stage as we see that a record low number rings in today as Donald Trump finds himself disapproved of nationwide by 15 to 17 points, depending on the average that you are looking at. Donald Trump's numbers today ring in the first time that his disapproval rating is at 56%, according to Nate Silver's Silver Bulletin, as well as on 50+1, which is a group of people who came out of the 538 Project and website from ABC News and now have their own website here, where the approval rating reaches 40%, on the cusp of reaching down to 39%, which would mark the lowest ever of Donald Trump's second term. And it doesn't look like there's a chance of rebound anytime in the near future. The American public is clearly upset and angry with the status of what we're seeing across the country, and they are blaming it on the president very clearly, and it shows in the data we are working with across the election results. Now, looking at 2025's most recent election that took place roughly 2 weeks ago, going on 3 weeks, we saw a complete rejection of Donald Trump as president of the United States in states like Pennsylvania and Georgia and California and Virginia and New Jersey and so on and so forth, as Democrats rang in victory after victory after victory, even in states that had voted for Donald Trump in the last election. And we talk a lot about the president's approval rating. We have a video coming out later today mapping Donald Trump's numbers when it comes down to state-by-state percentages and what it would look like if the electoral map was to adopt Donald Trump's national approval on a state-by-state basis. But the reason I think that this has reached a low point, and we have found ourselves talking about it to that degree, is because voters are so angry, there isn't even enough to overlap the margin of errors when it comes down to Donald Trump's approval rating, which is unlike the numbers even a month ago, when Donald Trump's disapproval rating a month to the day was at 52.9%. Today it rings in at 56%, and that approval rating has dropped from what was 44% nationwide down to 41%. And the net differences here don't seem all that significant, but they really tell a story. 15% more of the nation disapproves of the job that Donald Trump is doing on the national stage when he won the popular vote in the last election by 1.5%. You have seen here effectively nearly a 20-point swing in terms of what we saw in the popular vote, and actual approval rating marked today less than 1 year into the term. And what is interesting is that Nate Silver, alongside many other averaging sites, also too do a comparative point of how much poorly is Donald Trump doing compared to his first term, or Joe Biden's term, or Bill Clinton's term, or Obama's term, or George W. Bush's term. What does it look like in this 4-year time frame? Now, when we look at it compared to the first term, Donald Trump's numbers are now lower than where they were 8 years ago today. And thinking about what came of those 8 years ago today numbers was Democrats having a victory in 2017 that would eventually foretell the 2018 midterm elections, where Democrats went from 194 seats to gaining 41 nationally to 235 on the national stage against the Republican Party. Democrats ushered in a massive, massive victory in 2018 with numbers roughly similar, but even then slightly better for the president than what they are today. And that in and of itself is so incredibly damning, because Donald Trump's negative numbers in 2017 would also foretell an eventual loss for his party, not just on the presidential level, but they would lose House control in the midterms and lose Senate control in the next presidential cycle. And we could be in for a very similar set of circumstances, that Donald Trump's numbers drag down the GOP, they lose special elections, lose off-cycle elections, lose the midterm elections, eventually lose the presidential elections, and Democrats are ushered in to a trifecta for the first time in a long time. And looking at the numbers, Joe Biden's approval rating was higher where we were 4 years ago today. The fact remains, Obama was at a better point, George W. Bush was at a better point, Bill Clinton was at a better point. Meanwhile, Donald Trump isn't even outperforming his own terrible numbers. When in 2016, he couldn't win the popular vote, he won less swing states than he did this time around, and the national environment was not conducive to Trump in the same way that it was given to him in 2024, that he has squandered all of his political capital because he has gone too far, according to many people in the American public. And voters are not thrilled. They're not happy. They're not satisfied, even on the issues that Donald Trump had remained above water on for a long time. We can see it here. On inflation, he was never doing well. In the beginning, he was given the benefit of the doubt, but he was never doing well. On trade, he wasn't doing that well either. He came in, said, I'm going to do all these tariffs. People said, okay, well, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. But that isn't what happened here. What happened was that people stopped trusting him because it didn't work. It's all tied together. Inflation was bad. Trade is bad by nature of it. The economy, bad too. Now, Donald Trump started out with a bit more of a honeymoon phase that for about a month he was approved of on the economy. But very quickly today, not only is he disapproved of by a little bit, it's disapproved of by 22 points nationwide. And the one that really rings in, that he had been above water on for a long time, from January through February, through March, through April, through May, through June. It wasn't until the summertime that this flip happened. The numbers on immigration got very shaky. But even a month ago, they were only off by maybe 3 points nationwide, 2 points even. Now, it's nearly 10. I point this out to say that Donald Trump won the 2024 election on all of the issues I just mentioned. Inflation, economy, trade, and, of course, immigration. That mattered a lot to many of these swing states across the country and many of the voters across this country. But as it stands, there is not one piece of evidence that suggests that Donald Trump's numbers are in a better place than where they were a year ago, that they're in a better place than where they were 4 years ago, that they're in a better place than where they were 8 years ago, and that is saying something. The fact Trump rings in at a record low for someone who has had so many record lows. We talked about this before, the numbers of this second administration. I made a video on it 2 months ago. We had reached a record low. He had reached negative double digits nationally, and that was a massive piece of news. 6 months before then, he had crossed over that line and the honeymoon officially ending, and it didn't look like there was any signs of rebound. In May, he reached a low, but it picked back up. Voters started to say, okay, I'm with it a little bit more, but then barreled. One big beautiful bill passes, approval rating took an immediate hit, and 2 weeks after, started to recover slightly, went back down again, started to recover slightly, went back down again, down, because the new lows are new lows because they are constantly getting lower. And that's why we're at this point. And that's why when you look at all of these net issues, it's horrible for the president. It really is bad and explains why Republicans continue to lose and underperform and do poorly across the board. Because it isn't just one thing. It would be very different if it was just the economy, but he was up on immigration, up on trade, and up on inflation. But it is all intertwined together, is it not? Voters blame issues surrounding immigration for their economic state. They blame the economy for the bad state of trade. They blame trade and the economy for the bad state of inflation. And there's one common denominator when it comes down to who voters blame. And it's not the Democratic Party. It's Donald Trump. And when you take a look at the data points, I wish I had it up. I hadn't thought about it until we just were talking about it now. But when you look at the data of who voters blame more, Trump or Biden, for the current state of the economy, 67% of voters blame Donald Trump. And as much as, there can be an argument, I don't have a PhD in economics. I don't know. But what I do know is that voters are angry. I can read a poll. Anyone can look at these numbers and say, hold on a second. Why is it that, Virginia and New Jersey and Pennsylvania and Georgia and all of these states shut down Republicans to the degree that they did? Wait a second, here it is. It is the approval rating that explains every single reason why Trump is in as bad of a position that he is in today. And that is the nature of how Donald Trump has operated his presidency in the first term and the second term. Because he likes to take credit for everything good and likes to shift away from everything bad. But the public doesn't work that way. The COVID-19 pandemic, obviously he didn't start it, But the response was largely blamed on Donald Trump. And whether you agree or not, I do believe, and I think many, regardless of where you stand on it, that Trump probably could have done more to mitigate what was COVID-19. But I do think voters blamed him, right? They blamed the person at the top. They blamed the party in power. Republicans controlled the Senate. They controlled the White House, controlled the Supreme Court. They have every means at their disposal, even today, to enact the change that they want, that they say will save the economy, save healthcare, save the border crisis, and yet none of it is fixed. And voters continue to see what is pumped out of the White House, what Caroline Leavitt says on TV, how the press is covering this, how they are engaging with it, and they aren't buying it. And things like the Epstein files and Marjorie Taylor Greene's resignation only add to the immense amounts of drama we've already seen from this White House, from this Republican Party, and again, that common denominator. Who held up the Epstein files? Not Mike Johnson and John Thune with no direction. Obviously, they're the ones in D.C. who are making that choice. But it was Donald Trump who called them up and said, let's stop this. Right? When it comes down to this bully pulpit mechanism that Donald Trump has utilized, and this branding online and in the digital universe that has made the Republican Party seem and feel like they don't have a sense of reality and that they don't have a sense of humanity. Things like deportation ASMR don't ring in the heads of swing voters positively. And anyone could have told you that. But it is this scorched earth mentality that Donald Trump has taken in this second term because he doesn't have another term to run for. He doesn't have to worry about the way the American public perceives him because it isn't his agenda that is throttled. The one big beautiful bill passed, and that was it. He knows that the House's days are numbers, which is why he's trying to do what he can when it comes down to mid-decade redraws. But as it stands currently, even that won't save the Republican Party. And Trump's numbers are so incredibly abysmal that I don't see a way out of it either. And as of what we've seen on the national stage, on an issue-by-issue stage, on a statewide level, really anything tells us that, yeah, we're reaching new lows because it keeps getting worse and worse for the president, and it doesn't look like there are any signs of a rebound anytime soon. And if that holds true, Republicans are more than screwed in the future, and 2026 is going to look like a bloodbath across the board, with Democrats demolishing Republicans in swing districts, in swing states, all because of that one common denominator, the President of the United States, Donald Trump. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the top left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video for you to watch, and then a playlist for my 2028 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.